All right. Hey, everybody. This is Jim, the GM, and I am here almost a year after starting to play this Eotha campaign. And I've got Caleb with me, who's been here since the very beginning. Eric, who's been here since I think like game 2 or 3. Jeremy, who was here at the very beginning, and then unfortunately we had to go to days last summer, and so he cheered us on from behind the computer screen while he watched. And when we moved it back to nights, he jumped back in. And then Clyde, who's been here like since game 1, whereas Caleb's been here since game point 1 when we were setting up the world. So what we're going to do tonight is go ahead and let the guys just finish off each of their characters' story. And tonight we will start with Caleb and Malone. Go ahead, Caleb.
All right. I guess since I've been here the longest, that means I have seniority and get to go first. So first, I would like to say thanks to the guys who have played with us. The 3 guys that are here, Eric, Clyde, Jeremy. I almost called you Edinburgh. Appreciate it. Thanks for showing up on Thursdays or every other Thursday or whenever we found time to play. It was a lot of fun. Thanks to the guys. If anybody does come back and watch these after the fact, that's not part of the 5 people on the screen right now. We appreciate anybody who was able to jump in and add a little bit of depth and density to the story. It made it a lot more fun. Thanks to Jim for running the campaign, taking time out of his life to figure out how to make our guys go do things. That's pretty basic. But anyway, I was lucky enough to play more than one character, and I won't touch a whole lot on Ryan because, spoiler alert, he is where we left him, literally at the footstep of his dream situation. But after that went down, I was given the opportunity to play a character named Malone, and though I didn't get as much time with him to, leave a lot of hooks or anything like that for him, I did still get an opportunity to play him and to show a little bit of growth. So I want to take this time to kind of give you an idea of what happened. After coming off of the mountain, Malone and the rest of the Gilded Hand of Sacred Tor made their way back to Uhl, and Malone had made a decision, and last time we saw him in-game, he took off his sacred gauntlets and kind of left them at the foot of the mountain, more specifically at the foot of Edinburgh. And on his way, when he finally made it back to Uhl, he had figured out why he had made that decision, and it was because he decided it was time to give up the adventuring lifestyle, because he had come to the conclusion that being an adventurer was probably the reason most of the vessels of the Sacred Tor had died. Not through natural causes or anything like that, but through going out and looking for a fight, testing fate one too many times. So what he decided to do was he focused more, and the garbage man's finally shown up. Great timing. But he focused more on becoming a waypoint or a beacon for anybody who might be interested in hearing about the Sacred Tor, people who are down on their luck, people from out of town who were traveling for that very purpose. But he kind of became the face of the ghosts. And over the years, he would spread the story to anybody who would really listen to him. If you watched the last couple of episodes, you know that there was something a little bit different that separated him from the normal caster. He was very, very intent on using his martial prowess, something that he had long before he became, any sort of caster or sorcerer or whatever. So he wanted to take that and spread that on. He would go on to find a small home or school Basically, at the time, it was more of an orphanage, and it was just outside of Ul, and it had been tasked with taking the orphaned or abandoned children of the fallen soldiers of the war between Ul and Aletheus. And he saw this as an opportunity to train these boys and girls how to use weapons and tactics in case they should ever find themselves in a situation that needed that. And over the years, it went from being an orphanage to then being an academy. And the academy itself, their vow was, if you were willing to come and learn, then he was willing to keep you and teach you. And so that's kind of what happened. The events on the mountain took place, and Malone was probably in his early 30s. When he hit kind of the back end of 60, close to around 70-year-old age, he basically years after those events on Sorrow's Peak, a tragic event, ended Malone's life. During a training session, still able to kind of keep up with the boys who were still learning things, he was kind of using his parry tactics and things like that with the boy, showing him how to use his sword. And the boy nicked Malone just along the leg with one of the training blades that they'd had. At the time, it didn't seem very life-threatening, but over the next few days, the wound blackened, and what would later be found out is that a plague bonded with his blood, and none of the available healing magic or poultices or omens, chants, anything like that really put the plague at bay. And as Malone was laying on his deathbed, the boy was over him feeling guilty for really taking out this face of the gilded hand of Sacred Tour. Malone just kind of looked to him and said, "There is no need to cry. I have lived and I have seen, and though I die, I have been." And as he slid off the ring from his finger that all these years had housed the Sacred Tour himself, this retching pain kind of took over his body, and he realized that the Sacred Tour had been holding back all of this, hurt, all of this pain that he was really experiencing inside of his body. And on the other side of his deathbed, across from the weeping boy, was Grim. And he finally took the ring off and placed the ring into Grim's hand. And at that moment, Malone, the vessel of the Sacred Tour, the Snow Sword, was then lifeless and dead. And that is what happened to Malone.
Man, very nice. Very good story. Bear, Eric, you're up, man.
Where to start with for those that have been following, this will probably be the last time I get to do this as your friendly neighborhood half-orc. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. I am Eric. I have been playing from game 3. I have been playing the half-orc druid barbarian, your friendly neighborhood half-orc, High Kilgore Grimbear. After the events leading that took place upon the top of the mountain peak, Bear kind of felt the rage that he had felt growing in his heart, feeling that it has grown to the part to where it is consuming him. The moment Malone fell the first time in combat was the first time his rage has ever subsided, and he felt that his rage had grown too far, that the animal has fully taken over. So, with the falling of Mem, Bear realized that he had a curse placed upon him. That the stronger he become in the aspects of a druid, that the more the rage would consume him. With the fall of Mem, his heart has finally found peace. He no longer feels the growing hatred of rage. He no longer feels that he needs a animal, but he honors the animal that he wears upon his head was the factor to what kept Bear of his knowledge of the druids. The mantle that he had worn, the bear held, when he got back to Sorrow's Rest, he would do as he always said. The moment that he feels that he has paid back the debt, that he would no longer use the bear. So what he had done was, in sort of a ceremony like ritual, he destroyed his helm. And in destroying the helm, he's seen that the aspect of the bear is no longer needed, for his purpose is served. His life was saved, his heart is excited, or the rage in his heart had disappeared, and he felt that it was by the laws of nature and by the laws of the wild that he felt it in his heart to set the bear free. And by him destroying that mantle of the great bear that gave its life to protect him, he felt he had done the same in the peoples of Sorrow's Rest. Not too long after him destroying this mantle, he left Sorrow's Peak to find answers to what was he going to do now. He no longer felt he was needed. He felt the danger to Sorrow's Peak is no longer there. And he, unlike most adventurers, he should not be named, Bear, him being of the orcish nature, he still felt the need to adventure and the need to settle a more I guess you would say a more filling role. So he would disappear off, never to be heard of again, into the forest. And to most of to the people of the surrounding forest of where this half-orc barbarian druid took refuge, he had become a legend, saying that that there was a large orc that roams the forest, an orc druid, but none would believe any of the townspeople. Little did they know, the orc is real.
Wonderful, Eric. Thank you. Jeremy and Sir Laurel Edgar Chasseurs mon Edinburgh.
Sir Edinburgh, when last we saw him, watched as Bear showed mercy on Mem. And Edinburgh knew in his heart that he couldn't do it. And he drove the Chorus into Mem's heart. and Mim was dead. Edinburgh stood watch. And then Malone had asked him to aid him. Edinburgh walked away, leaving the sword through the heart of Mim, there on the mountain. We skip forward some. Edinburgh returns to Aletheus. There's some celebration and some sorrow, as many of the aces died there on the mountain. And Edinburgh would attend many of their funerals, and he would be bestowed with many honors. He would find himself returning to his life he had before, a life of leisure, a life amidst the tournament nights. Eventually he kind of grew restless with this. It just wasn't the same anymore. Something had been eating away at him for some time, and he began spending his days a bit more reclusive, going through the family records and the records of Aletheus, seeking a somewhat lost history of the family Edinburgh. He was looking to see their involvement with the war of Mim and the Devas. He spent quite some time on this, but eventually he exhausted his resources, at least in Aletheus, and he began planning a new expedition to meet with the ghosts, to meet with the Devas, to find what he could. And he would take his squire, Julian, who we haven't seen in a very long time. And they would travel. They would travel about the land. Edinburgh would teach Julian the path of the night, but also ways of scholarship, as he met with ghosts and, of course, Willoughby, who had some of their records, and he would spend quite some time with Malafalua, who seemingly had the best memory of everything before, and he learned of this history. And as he took notes, he managed to find himself further and further back to members of the Edinburgh family that were just not even in the family records from a long time ago, when they were just simple merchants, not famed merchants, just simple merchants. He found himself north, in the land of Ravengard. He would find one of the first Edinburghs, Lear of Edinburgh. No, Lear of Edwin's Brook was the name he had been known by. Due to translations, it managed to become Edinburgh, and he found the grave of Lear of Edwin's Brook, ancient, but still intact. He looked over the markings on the grave. They were familiar markings, reminding him of the blade he once held, the blade he left behind, the Corasus. Edinburgh laughed. Julian had no idea why. Edinburgh looked at Julian, I believe I've finished my research. And after that, Sir Edinburgh traveled not far from where he was, to a small town named Clails. He took his notes and asked Julian to take them back to the family, take them to Willoughby, take them to whoever. He wasn't going to be returning. He had felt somewhat disenchanted with the life of Aletheus, the war with Ul, and he decided to use the wealth he had amassed and some old family inheritance to purchase land. There in Clails, there wasn't a lot of fighters. They were simpler folk, and many of them saw Edinburgh and just felt safer around him. They could tell that he knew how to handle himself. He traveled with his weapons and his armor, and over the years he would grow to be known as the protector of Clails, and he found himself quite satisfied. It was little things. A couple of bandits here, a goblin there, yeah, a wolf every now and then. But to the people of Clails, Edinburgh was a hero, and that's all he ever asked for. To just be a hero. Over the years, this small village would see many strange folk making their way there to meet with Sir Edinburgh, and every time some very strange person came, they knew exactly where to send them. Edinburgh was the hero there for a very long time, but eventually, time. Edinburgh passed away at the age of 73. A hero.
Great job, Jeremy. That was absolutely wonderful. Thank you for that story. Thank you for that story. And last, the guy who everybody else had their sides, but this side story was his story. Clyde, tell us about Garn.
Well, people, everybody that has, been with me, I thank y'all for letting me play with y'all. After the fight with Mim and the death of Wold, Garn finally was able to start contemplating the fact that he knew nothing about himself upon waking up on the mountain. With these celebrations and all that in Sorrow's Rest, the axe that Garn carried still carried the rocky shape when he and his brothers and sister struck down Wold. He was finally able to allow himself to not be the one to shoulder or to carry the weight of the world. He sat down and wrote letters to each of the people that were with him then and at the end. And in the letters, it said, although I had never really told you, you were my brothers before I found my brothers and sisters. You were my brothers. And for that I'm grateful. He would leave Shay. Shay would find his key with a note that says, I'm sure you'll find a use for it. He would leave when he would leave silently like he arrived, and he would go back to the mountain, back where he woke up, and he would search all the mountain and finally come to the point where he never found why he just woke up without any knowledge, but he found a chamber, and within that chamber he had written all of his memories onto the walls, and he would spend the rest of his life reading his memories and protecting Sorrow's Rest from the mountain. He was their watcher. Malafalua would occasionally speak, why does it always have to be him that shouldered the duties? And he watched over Sorrow's Rest until the mountain reclaimed her child. And the place where Garn would be born was actually is now known as Garn's Watch, and his axe is buried into the mountain where he's usually born, or where he usually wakes up. And that's what happened.
Thank you, Clyde. Appreciate your story. Guys, thank you so much for being a part of this. I appreciate you guys and every part that you've been in helping this story, come out more. To the other guys who've been in the game, the Samuels, both Samuel Caldwell and Samuel Chamberlain, Lloyd, Paul, some guys who, like Caleb mentioned, had some characters that showed up for a game and just helped to add depth to what was going on. Appreciate you all playing. But before we go, one last scene for you. And we're in the Rest. And it's evening. Outside of the Rest, everything seems to be nice and calm. It's late evening. It's not busy out in the streets. Sorrow's Rest has gotten larger. After the events, some of Genner has decided to let any of the aces who would like to stay at Sorrow's Rest, they may, and be a loose-knit guard to stay with the town. The Scottus promises that Scottus has promised that all of the ghosts will continue to come in, check on the town, help however they can. The Eothas all leave going back to Uhl, and they run off quickly and hurriedly, turning into wolves as you watch them disappear into the fields, taking, much like you guys did, the most direct route back to Uhl. Layla stands with the remaining of her 40 sand ghosts, and you see as she's speaking to the three of them, and they're nodding as she speaks. She reaches up and puts her hands up in the air, and you watch them bend down toward her, and she places her hands on both sides of their heads and just places her forehead against it and does this to each one. And she watches as the three of them turn and just begin following the road north, not necessarily knowing how to get back to their people. Isaac Khan is taking up a more permanent residence at the Rhine Forge, doing what he can to begin imbuing his own power within the items. Malafalua, having spent much time with Edinburgh, has not been seen since. He's been spending his life, his long life, finding out more and everything else that he possibly can about the world, trying to fill in the gaps of what he has forgotten of the now, because while being the most having the best memory of the previous lives, of the current time, he may be the most behind. And Garn's story follows word for word and step for step exactly as he said. And it's dark outside the rest. Shay's behind the bar. He's smiling as he's got his hands on his hips, looking around. There's people in his bar. It's not packed. Not yet. One day it will be. But right now, to have half the seats full, it's a hell of a start. And the door opens.
The door opens, and a lanky figure begins to shuffle in. Getting out from behind, the light snowfall that is coming down. His boots seem worn, leather, strapped. And the figure makes his way over to the bar. And he sits down. And he draws back the hood from his head. And his messy hair drapes over his face. As he takes the cloak off of his shoulders and puts it down on the bar itself. Well, can I get a drink or what?
Sure. Hey, tell me what you want. I'm right busy. Hey, honey, I need you to take care of their plates and their orders. They look like they're about to run out. Shay turns around, starts filling up pints. What do you want?
Just get me whatever's good. And I think I'm going to need a room.
Well, sorry, I've only got two, and I'm kind of saving one for. Hold on. Hold on. And he reaches up and he grabs a mug. And as he's picking it up off one of the top shelves, he watches a sweet berry ale slips out. I don't know how good it is now. It's been up there a while, friend. But I think this is the drink you're wanting.
The figure reaches out with his arm, and along his arm, you see these inscribed etchings, tattoos, marks. And he reaches and he grabs the ale, and he turns it over and dumps all the liquid out into his hand, and finally a key drops into it. And he closes his palm around it and says, "Thanks, Shay."
Yeah, sure. Just don't mess up the room, okay? Just the way it was left. And gentlemen, thank you so much. Appreciate you. I'm Jim the GM, and it's been wonderful with Caleb and Clyde and Eric and Jeremy. And we will have another game coming up here soon. Everybody starting new characters. We will be helping a prince, the lowest brother of a family, trying to find a way to convince his older brothers to give up their line on the throne, and so that he can become the king. But how will he ever learn what is needed? The two oldest brothers have both been trained to take the throne. The eldest because he is the eldest. The second because in case something happens to the eldest, there is a replacement. The third is a priest, taking up the duty of piety throughout the kingdom. The fourth is a lush, with absolutely no desire for the throne, but a desire for much, much more. And the fifth is our prince, whom hopefully our four new friends, being played by the same four members at the bottom of your screen, hopefully they will be able to train him to help him become the king that not only the island wants, but that the island needs. Guys, thank you so much, and we will see you in a couple weeks at our next game, or at our first game. Bye, guys.